Some ancient texts and artifacts are not what they seem. They are masterpieces containing knowledge we are only now rediscovering, profound secrets that have waited centuries for our technology and understanding to catch up. By the end of this journey, you will see the entire timeline of human ingenuity in a startling new light. We will examine a Greek device that calculated the motion of planets and a map that seems to show a continent hidden under ice. These works hold advanced mathematics, forgotten astronomy, and medical insights that were lost to the ages. This exploration is about more than the past. It is about how unlocking this buried wisdom can offer solutions for our future and inspire entirely new innovations. How much of what we consider modern was already understood long ago, that thread of transmission is astonishingly fragile. Think of human knowledge not as a steadily growing mountain, but as a flickering candle carried through a vast, dark corridor of time. A single gust of wind, a moment of neglect, and the light can be snuffed out, plunging entire corridors of understanding back into shadow. The most famous symbol of this loss is the Library of Alexandria, a repository said to have held a significant portion of the world's written wisdom. Its destruction, whether by a single fire or a series of conflicts, represents a profound turning point. In that one event, countless works on philosophy, science, and history were reduced to ash, creating gaps in our collective memory that we are still trying to fill today. Yet, not all loss is so dramatic or violent. Often, knowledge fades through quiet, persistent erosion. A master craftsperson passes away without an apprentice. A spoken language, rich with nuanced terms for ecosystems or stars, falls silent as its last speakers are gone. An intricate oral tradition, memorized for generations, meets a society that values the written word above all else, and the living chain of memory is broken. The understanding isn't destroyed, it simply becomes a locked room for which the key has been misplaced. This is the true nature of the rediscoveries we are about to explore. They are not about finding a dusty book on a shelf. They are about realizing that the book was there all along, but we lack the language to read it or the tools to see its hidden layers. Our modern lenses, from X-ray fluorescence that can read a palimpsest, a manuscript scraped and written over, to satellite imagery that reveals buried city layouts, are granting us a form of time travel. They allow us to stand beside the ancient scholar, the astronomer, the engineer, and finally comprehend the brilliance they inscribed in stone, metal, or parchment. This changes the question from what did they know to a far more humbling one. What magnificent structures of thought have we been walking past for centuries, simply because we forgot how to see that diver's corroded lump of bronze and wood held a secret that would take over a century to fully unlock? The mechanism, named for the island near where it was found, sat in a museum drawer for decades, a puzzling curiosity. Early scholars saw gears and assumed it was an astrolabe, a common device for sailors. But the truth was far more extraordinary. When researchers finally applied advanced imaging techniques, they saw a miniature cosmos engineered in bronze. Delicate gear wheels, some with teeth cut at precise angles, interlocked in a system of breathtaking complexity. This was not a simple tool, it was a mechanical model of the heavens. By turning a hand crank, an ancient user could advance a pointer across a dial to see the predicted position of the sun, the moon, and likely 5 known planets. It could show the phases of the moon and even account for the subtle wobble in the moon's orbit, a motion so complex it was not formally described again until Sir Isaac Newton. One dial, researchers believe, was dedicated to tracking the 4-year cycle of the Panhellenic Games, including the Olympics, tying celestial time to human cultural events. The mechanism's very existence is a thunderclap in our understanding of history. It proves that certain Greek thinkers had moved far beyond philosophical speculation about the cosmos. They were building working physical models of it. This was a level of precision engineering and astronomical knowledge not seen again in Europe until the cathedral clocks of the 14th century. The most haunting question it raises is not about its function, but its origin. Who made this? And what else did they make? The mechanism feels too advanced to be a one-off experiment. It suggests a lost school of thought, a tradition of crafting intricate machines that simply vanished from the historical record, perhaps a casualty of those same forces of loss we discussed. Its silent gears whisper of an alternate path for technology, one that was interrupted, leaving this single, astonishing artifact as a fragment of a world we thought we knew, but are only now beginning to truly see. While the mechanism reveals a sophisticated understanding of mechanics, another artifact presents a mystery of pure information. Deep within the rare book library at Yale University rests a book that has stubbornly refused to give up its secrets. Known as the Manuscript, this small, 200-page codex dates to the early 15th century and is written entirely in an unknown script, flowing in neat paragraphs next to bewildering illustrations. Its pages are a gallery of the surreal. You will find delicate paintings of plants that do not seem to exist, their roots and flowers arranged in impossible configurations. There are circular diagrams filled with stars and strange symbols that some interpret as astrological charts. Most curiously, there are numerous illustrations of nude women, often depicted bathing in or connected by intricate tubes and pools of a vivid green fluid. For over a century, this book has been a siren song for the world's top codebreakers, including those who cracked military ciphers during global conflicts. Yet every proposed solution, from simple substitution ciphers to complex lost languages, has ultimately fallen apart under scrutiny. The text possesses a statistical structure eerily similar to a natural language, with word lengths and character repetitions that follow predictable patterns, which argues against it being a random forgery. Some researchers, examining the botanical drawings, suggest a few plants might be highly stylized versions of species from the Americas, like a sunflower or a pepper plant, which would be an anachronism sparking theories about pre-Columbian transoceanic contact. Others propose it is a book of herbal remedies, written in a coded script to protect valuable medical knowledge. But the central question remains unanswered. Is this the greatest literary hoax in history, a meaningless creation designed to baffle, or is it a genuine artifact of a completely lost system of botany, cosmology, and perhaps even physiology? The manuscript's power lies in this very ambiguity. It represents a locked door in the mansion of human knowledge. We can see the door, we can study its craftsmanship, but we have yet to find the key. It is a tangible reminder that there are forms of writing and thinking that may have flourished and then vanished without a trace, leaving behind only this beautiful, frustrating, and silent testament to the vastness of what we do not know. From a manuscript of unreadable script, we move to an artifact with a function we can test. In the quiet storage of a museum rests a collection of seemingly mundane objects, a small pot, a rolled copper sheet, and an iron rod. Discovered near Baghdad and dating from the Parthian era, around 200 years before the Common Era to 200 years after, these items were found together, a puzzling trio. When a German archaeologist examined them in the 1930s, he proposed a startling theory. If you filled the clay jar with an acidic liquid like vinegar or grape juice, inserted the copper cylinder, and then placed the iron rod inside that, you would not have a storage vessel. You would have a battery. This simple assembly, now known as the Baghdad battery, is capable of generating a small but measurable electric current, around 1 volt. The immediate question is as compelling as it is unanswerable. What was it for? The most practical theory points to electroplating, the process of using electricity to bond a thin layer of one metal, like gold, onto the surface of another, like silver. Modern experimenters have successfully used replicas of the jar to do exactly that, gilding small objects. Ancient artifacts from the same region do show examples of very fine gold plating that have long puzzled historians, as traditional fire gilding methods are difficult to control with such precision. Could this have been their secret? Other suggestions are more speculative. Perhaps the gentle tingling sensation from the current was used in therapeutic practices, a form of early medicine to soothe muscles. Or maybe it held a ceremonial purpose, creating a mysterious, unseen force for religious rituals. The debate is part of its significance. While it is unlikely these jars powered ancient cities, their very existence is a profound spark in the dark. They demonstrate that the fundamental principle of a galvanic cell, a chemical reaction producing electricity, was not only observable but potentially harnessed over two ago. This knowledge did not ignite an industrial revolution. It appears as a flicker that then faded, never connecting to a broader scientific tradition. The Baghdad battery forces a humbling reconsideration. It asks us to look at other unexplained ancient craftsmanship, the perfectly mirrored surfaces, the unusually bonded metals, and wonder how many other quiet experiments with nature's forces were conducted, mastered locally, and then lost, leaving behind only these cryptic clues for a future civilization that would one day believe it had discovered electricity for the very first time. The quiet hum of electricity leads us to a stone wall in Egypt, carved with an image that refuses to be confined to ancient myth. Within the Temple of Hathor, a series of crypts hold a famous bas-relief. Its central object is unmistakable to a modern eye, an elongated, teardrop-shaped bulb, inside of which a serpent stretches lengthwise, its head touching one end. This serpent is held aloft by a supporting pillar, while a cable seems to connect the bulb's base to a box gripped by a kneeling figure. Another figure stands nearby, as if operating or guarding the device. To anyone living in the age of incandescent light, the interpretation feels instinctive. This looks exactly like a giant light bulb. The mainstream archaeological explanation is one of profound symbolism. Egyptologists identify the object as a lotus flower, from which a snake, representing the god, is born, illustrating a moment of divine creation. The pillar is a pillar, a symbol of stability, and the box is a container for the snake's power. It is a sacred scene, not an electrical diagram, yet the controversy persists for a compelling reason. It confronts a long-standing practical mystery. How did the artists and builders of ancient Egypt illuminate the deep, windowless interiors of tombs and temples like the Great Pyramid? The walls of these chambers show no trace of soot from torches or oil lamps, which would have been unavoidable over the thousands of hours of meticulous work required. The traditional explanation points to clever use of polished metal mirrors to reflect sunlight deep into passages, but this method has significant limitations, especially for detailed carving in a dead-end chamber. This practical puzzle gives the alternative theory its enduring power. Proponents ask, what if the relief is not merely symbolic, but a technical illustration? Could the snake represent a glowing filament, the pillar a ceramic insulator, the box a crude battery or generator, and the cable a means of transmission? While no physical archaeological evidence for such technology has been found, the relief's uncanny resemblance serves a purpose far beyond proving ancient electricity. It acts as a mirror for our own assumptions. It challenges us to consider whether we are too quick to dismiss the literal in favor of the symbolic, simply because the literal seems impossible within our established timeline. Perhaps the greatest lesson of the light is not about what the ancient Egyptians knew, but about the limits of our own interpretation. We view their world through the lens of our technological paradigm, often struggling to see a meaning that could comfortably hold both deep myth and practical invention as two sides of the same sacred coin. The debate over symbolism and invention finds a new dimension on a sheet of parchment drawn in 1513. In the Palace Museum in Istanbul, the map created by Ottoman admiral and cartographer survives as a fragment, but what a fragment it is. Its notes, written in the admiral's own hand, state clearly that he compiled it from 20 older source maps, including several dating back to the time of Alexander the Great. The portion we have shows the Atlantic Ocean, with the west coasts of Europe and Africa, and the east coast of the Americas with stunning detail. The outline of Brazil, the curve of the Caribbean, the placement of islands, all demonstrate a geographical knowledge that seems to leap ahead of its time for a European map, let alone one from the Ottoman world. But it is the lower left corner that ignites the fiercest controversy. Below the tip of South America, the map depicts a landmass, with bays, rivers, and mountain ranges stretching eastward. To many who examine it, this land bears a startling resemblance to the northern coastline of Queen Maud Land in Antarctica, a continent that would not be officially sighted by Western explorers for another 300 years. Even more incredibly, this coastline is drawn free of its mile-thick glacial covering, a condition that geological evidence suggests last existed millions of years ago. This single detail has fueled a compelling and contentious theory that had access to ancient source maps compiled by a seafaring civilization with knowledge of a pre-Ice Age world, a civilization whose records have since turned to dust. The counter-arguments are equally grounded. Skeptics propose the landmass is simply a distorted continuation of South America, or perhaps a speculative guess at a great southern continent, a common cartographic trope of the era known as Terra. Modern analysis shows the map's accuracy in the Caribbean is remarkably precise, but its projection becomes increasingly distorted further south, making definitive identification of that mysterious land a challenge for experts. The true power of the map may not lie in proving the existence of an antediluvian super-cartographer, but in the profound question it makes us sit with. It forces us to consider the vast, silent archives of human exploration that have been lost to war, decay, and the simple passage of time. How many other voyages, how many other charts from Phoenician, Minoan, or other unknown mariners simply vanished? The map is a ghost, a whisper of possibility that not all knowledge travels in a straight line from past to present. Some of it falls into the sea, leaving behind only a cryptic contour on a surviving copy, a shape that challenges our entire narrative of discovery and asks us to wonder what else the ancient sailors might have known and where they might have really gone. The silhouette of a continent on an ancient map is a mystery of grand scale, but sometimes the most profound clues come in the smallest of packages. In a tomb at Saqqara, Egypt, dated to around 200 years before the Common Era, archaeologists uncovered a simple object carved from sycamore wood. At first glance, it is a bird, sleek and stylized. But a second look reveals a detail that does not belong on any bird in nature, a perfectly vertical, rectangular tail fin, like that of a modern airplane. This is the Saqqara bird, an artifact that fits in the palm of your hand, yet carries a weight of questions that seems to defy its size. For decades, it was catalogued as a toy or perhaps a ceremonial representation of a hawk, a symbol of the god Horus. Its true intrigue, however, was unlocked not in a museum case, but in a wind tunnel. When engineers and aerodynamics experts constructed precise replicas and tested them, they found something remarkable. The little wooden model exhibited genuine aerodynamic properties. Its wings are slightly angled, a feature called dihedral that provides inherent lateral stability, preventing a craft from rolling excessively. The shape of its body and that distinctive flat tail fin suggest an intuitive grasp of principles that would not be formally defined until the age of the Wright brothers: lift, stability, and control. It is crucial to state clearly, this was not an ancient aircraft. There is no evidence of propulsion, of control surfaces for a pilot, or of any larger version ever being built. But that may be missing the point entirely. What the Saqqara bird strongly implies is a process of brilliant observation and empirical experimentation. Imagine an artisan, thousands of years ago, watching the vultures riding the thermal currents over the Nile. They would see how wings are shaped, how tails adjust in the wind, how balance is maintained. Through trial and error with wood and reed, perhaps even launching models from high places, they could have refined a shape that simply worked, that glided gracefully. This is knowledge of a different kind, not written in a text or encoded in a script, but embodied in a physical form. It is a testament to the human mind's ability to reverse engineer nature through craft long before the language of physics existed to explain why it worked. The bird asks us a subtle but powerful question. How many other principles of science and engineering were discovered, applied in practical ways, and then lost because that understanding lived only in the hands of the craftsperson, not in the library of the philosopher? It stands as a silent, wooden testament to a path of technological development that was deeply intuitive, rooted in the natural world, and whose full legacy we may never fully comprehend. The intuitive engineering of the Saqqara bird speaks to a knowledge carried in the hands, but some wisdom was preserved in a far more deliberate and monumental way. In the National Library of Sweden, secured in a climate-controlled case, rests a book so large it has its own name, the Codex Gigas, or the Giant Book. Created by Benedictine monks in Bohemia in the early 13th century, it is the largest surviving medieval manuscript in the world, a staggering artifact that required the skins of an estimated 160 donkeys to produce its vellum pages. Its sheer physical presence is overwhelming, but its contents are what truly cement its place as a masterpiece of preserved knowledge. Legend, of course, offers a more dramatic origin story. It claims the Codex was the work of a single monk, condemned to be sealed alive within a wall for breaking his vows. In desperation, he promised to create a book containing all human knowledge in a single night. As midnight approached and the task proved impossible, he prayed not to a saint, but to the fallen angel himself, offering his soul in exchange for completion. The devil is said to have finished the manuscript, and in gratitude, the monk added the infamous full-page portrait of the Prince of Darkness that gives the book its popular nickname, the Devil's Bible. This chilling tale, while a compelling piece of folklore, obscures the far more significant truth of what the Codex actually contains. It is not a sinister text, but a breathtakingly ambitious encyclopedia. Within its massive folios is the complete Latin Vulgate Bible, major historical works by authors like, and a collection of practical medical texts that are the key to its true legacy. These medical sections are a direct lifeline to the ancient world. They contain detailed diagnoses, surgical instructions, and extensive lists of herbal remedies, meticulously from the works of Greek and Roman authorities like Galen and. In an era often characterized by the loss of classical learning, this manuscript was a fortress. It safeguarded centuries of accumulated medical theory and practice, from the treatment of common illnesses to complex procedures, ensuring this fragile, life-saving information survived the political and social upheavals of its time. The Codex Gigas represents a different kind of ancient masterpiece, one not of lost technology, but of conscious, diligent preservation. Its creation was an act of profound responsibility, a recognition that knowledge is the most precious of treasures and must be protected at all costs, even if that meant binding it into a volume so heavy it requires two people to lift. By studying its pages, historians can trace the unbroken, though tenuous, thread of scientific thought from antiquity through the so-called Dark Ages. It reminds us that the light of understanding was never fully extinguished. It was often kept alive in silent scriptoria by monks who understood they were not just copying words, but carrying a fragile flame forward for a future they would never see. High, on the arid plateau of southern Peru, the earth itself holds a secret only visible from the heavens. For centuries, the desert appeared as a vast, empty canvas of reddish-brown rock and dust, a place of profound silence. Then, in the 1920s, the advent of aircraft revealed a spectacle that comprehension. Etched into the desert floor were hundreds of enormous lines, geometric shapes, and intricate drawings of animals and plants, some stretching over 600 feet long. A colossal hummingbird, a sinuous monkey, a precise spider, and a towering humanoid figure now stared up from the plains, invisible to anyone standing among them. These are the lines, and their sheer scale presents an immediate, visceral mystery. Why would a people, using only simple tools and careful planning, create art they could never fully see? The traditional explanations pointed toward ritual, suggesting these were sacred pathways for ceremonial processions, or perhaps offerings to gods believed to dwell in the sky or the mountains. Yet a more profound possibility has emerged from modern research, one that sees the lines not as art for art's sake, but as a functional masterpiece of engineering and astronomy. Through meticulous computer modeling and on-site observation, researchers like Maya dedicated their lives to mapping the alignments. They discovered something remarkable. Many of the long, straight lines point directly to the position on the horizon where the sun rises or sets during the June and December solstices, the pivotal turning points of the year. Other lines align with the heliacal rising of important stars, their first appearance in the dawn sky after a period of invisibility. The giant spider glyph, for instance, may be a stylized representation of the constellation Orion, a celestial marker of great significance across many ancient cultures. This evidence suggests the entire desert plateau was transformed into a colossal astronomical calendar, a permanent observatory carved directly into the landscape. For the people living in one of the driest places on Earth, timing was everything. Knowing precisely when the summer rains would arrive, when riverbeds would flow, and when to plant their crops was a matter of survival. By using these monumental alignments, priests or astronomers could stand at specific points and watch the sun or stars slide into position along a designated line, announcing the arrival of a new season with unerring accuracy. This interpretation fundamentally transforms our understanding. The lines become a sophisticated scientific instrument, a testament to a deep, practical knowledge of celestial mechanics. They represent a civilization so intimately connected to the cycles of the cosmos that they chose to inscribe that relationship onto the very skin of their world, creating a permanent, communal record visible to the powers they relied upon. It is a breathtaking act of fusion, where art, science, and spirituality become indistinguishable, a silent dialogue between humanity and the heavens written in lines of stone and faith. While the people wrote their calendar across a desert, another civilization achieved a different kind of permanence by mastering a material we often associate with decay. In the heart of Delhi, India, a single, solid piece of iron has stood exposed to sun, monsoon rains, and urban pollution for more than 1,600 years. The Iron Pillar of Delhi, erected during the powerful Gupta Empire around the year 400, rises over 7 meters from the ground, a silent sentinel of a golden age. Its very existence is a quiet defiance of a fundamental law of nature, the relentless rust that consumes iron. For centuries, visitors and later scientists marveled at its smooth, dark surface, which shows only the faintest, most superficial discoloration despite enduring the elements for well over a millennium. Modern analysis has finally unlocked its secret, revealing a masterpiece not of art or astronomy, but of profound metallurgical genius. The pillar is forged from astonishingly pure wrought iron, but its true protection comes from two key factors. First, it contains an unusually high amount of phosphorus, a result of the unique smelting process used by ancient Indian ironworkers, who employed specific clay and charcoal in their furnaces. Second, and most crucially, it contains very little sulfur. This precise chemical recipe, achieved entirely through empirical craft and control of the forge, allows a thin, stable film of iron hydrogen phosphate to form on the metal's surface. This film, called a passive layer, is self-healing, clinging tightly to the iron beneath and acting as an invisible shield against the oxygen and moisture that cause corrosion. For modern metallurgy, this was a staggering discovery. The science behind such protective passive layers was not formally understood and applied, as in the creation of stainless steel, until the early 20th century. Yet here was a physical object, a massive public monument, demonstrating that the practical result of this knowledge had been achieved and implemented on a grand scale over 1,000 years prior. The pillar is not an accident. It is evidence of a highly refined, repeatable industrial technique. It speaks of ironworkers who, through generations of observation and experimentation, learned to read the color of a flame, the texture of a slag, and the ring of a hammer strike to produce a material of legendary durability, known in ancient Sanskrit texts as or ideal iron. This artifact does more than resist rust. It resists our simplistic timeline of progress. It stands as a direct challenge, asking us to reconsider what advanced truly means. It represents a pinnacle of materials science arrived at not through quantum theory, but through the accumulated hands-on wisdom of the forge, a wisdom so complete it was later lost, only to be independently rediscovered in our own age. The pillar is a teacher, its lesson written not in words, but in the enduring strength of its silent form. The silent endurance of iron gives way to a more fragile mystery, one pressed into clay. In the ruins of the Minoan Palace on the island of Crete, an Italian archaeologist made a find in 1908 that would become one of the world's most famous puzzles. It was a simple disc of fired clay, about the size of a small plate, but its surface told a different story. Radiating from the center in a tight spiral were 241 distinct symbols, each one stamped into the wet clay with a seal before it was baked. Here were human figures marching, birds in flight, shields, helmets, flowers, and tools, all arranged in clear groups divided by incised lines. This was not a random impression. It was a deliberate message, a text. And that is where the certainty ends, for the script of the disc is utterly unique. No other example of it has ever been found, not in Crete, not anywhere. The symbols belong to no known writing system, making this single object an island unto itself in the archaeological record. For over a century, the disc has been a siren call for linguists, historians, and amateur sleuths alike, each hoping to be the one to crack its code. Proposed translations have ranged from the profound to the playful. Is it a religious hymn to a Minoan goddess, a record of a legal treaty, an ancient inventory of goods, or perhaps even the rules for a long-forgotten board game? The very fact that we cannot tell speaks volumes. Every attempt at decipherment stumbles on the same fundamental problem. With only one specimen, there is nothing to compare it to. You cannot find patterns of repetition across different texts. You cannot match names to known historical figures. You cannot even be sure which direction to read the spiral. Modern efforts have turned to computational analysis, using pattern recognition software and vast linguistic databases to search for any hidden structure that might hint at a language family. But so far, the clay keeps its secret. This singularity is what makes the disc so haunting. It forces us to confront a chilling possibility in our study of the past. We are accustomed to finding fragments, broken pieces of a larger whole we can often reconstruct. But what if the disc is not a fragment? What if it is the whole, the only surviving witness to an entire way of writing, and by extension, an entire body of thought, history, and knowledge that flourished and then vanished without leaving a single other trace? It stands as a stark, physical metaphor for loss. It is a locked book for which the library has burned down, a single page from a novel whose title, author, and plot are forever unknown. Its silent spiral is a reminder that the past is not just what we have found, but an immeasurable ocean of what has been erased, leaving behind only these rare and enigmatic driftwood messages on the shore of time. The silent mystery of a single clay disc finds a startling echo in the silent, preserved faces of an entire people. Far to the east, in the searing, rainless expanse of the Tarim Basin in western China, the desert performed its own act of preservation. Here in the early 20th century, explorers began uncovering bodies, not as skeletons, but as mummies, their skin, hair, and clothing astonishingly intact after. Their faces told a story no one was prepared for. With high noses, light hair, and deeply set eyes, these individuals possessed distinctly Caucasian features, a fact that stood in stark contrast to their resting place at the heart of Asia. Dating from as early as 1,800 years before the Common Era to around 200 years after, these Tarim mummies presented an immediate and profound puzzle. They were not where history's textbooks said they should be. Their very presence whispered of epic, forgotten journeys across the vast steppes and mountain passes of Inner Asia, challenging the long-held, simpler narratives of migration and cultural isolation. But the true masterpiece lies not just in their preserved forms, but in what they wore. These ancient travelers were clothed in brilliantly colored woolen textiles, woven with a sophistication that speaks volumes. Some garments display intricate tartan patterns, a technique and aesthetic we strongly associate with the Celtic cultures of far Western Europe. The vibrancy of the colors, after thousands of years, is a testament to a deep chemical knowledge. Analysis shows the weavers used plants like madder root to produce rich reds and true indigo for deep blues, mastering complex dyeing processes that required precise control of temperature and chemistry. The weaving itself, from the spin of the yarn to the looms set up, represents a high art, a repository of technical skill passed down through generations. These were not the crude wraps of nomadic survival. They were the products of a refined material culture, a society that valued beauty, status, and identity expressed through cloth. Modern genetic studies have confirmed what the physical appearance suggested. These individuals carried DNA lineages linking them to populations from the Black Sea region and Western Eurasia. This scientific evidence transforms a curious anomaly into a historical revelation. It proves that the ancient world was knitted together by long-distance migration and trade networks of a scale and regularity we are only beginning to appreciate. Ideas, technologies, and artistic styles were moving across continents long before the fabled Silk Road was formally established. The mummies and their magnificent textiles are quietly rewriting a chapter of human prehistory. They show us that the map of the ancient past was not a collection of isolated, static cultures, but a dynamic, interconnected web. A weaver in the Tarim Basin could produce a pattern that would one day be found in Scotland, not through coincidence, but because knowledge itself was a traveler, carried on the backs of people whose incredible journeys are only now being rediscovered, preserved in the dry air and the threads of a woolen cloak. The intricate textiles of the Tarim mummies speak of a world connected by trade and shared craft, but another kind of thread was being woven in a different part of the world, one that would stitch together the very fabric of modern medicine. In the Royal Library of the University of Bologna, there is a manuscript that does not look like a revolutionary text. Bound in leather and written in careful Arabic script, it is a copy of a work titled Al, or the Method. Its author was a surgeon from Islamic Spain named Al-Al, who compiled it in the late 10th century. For hundreds of years, this encyclopedia was the definitive guide to surgery across 3 continents, and its quiet, systematic pages contain a sophistication that would not be matched in Europe for centuries. While the Renaissance is often celebrated for its medical advances, the foundation for that progress was laid here, in the methodical work of the Islamic Golden Age. Al's approach was revolutionary in its clarity and practicality. He organized the method into 30 volumes, dedicating an entire volume to surgery itself, complete with detailed, labeled illustrations of over 200 instruments. These were not vague drawings. They were precise diagrams of tools he designed and refined through a lifetime of practice. You see the birth of specialized equipment, from bone saws and forceps of specific shapes for specific tasks, to the earliest known illustrations of syringe-like devices for irrigation. But the text goes far beyond the tools. It is in procedure and principle. Al provides step-by-step instructions for operations that were considered impossibly dangerous. He describes how to remove cataracts by depression, a technique that restored sight, and outlines a method for performing a cesarean section when the life of the mother was at risk. He detailed how to set complex fractures, how to treat wounds to minimize scarring, and even how to use catgut for internal stitching. a material that dissolves naturally in the body and is still used in some surgeries today. Perhaps most profoundly, his writing is infused with a sense of medical ethics and hygiene that feels strikingly modern. He emphasized the critical importance of a clean operating environment, of sterilizing instruments, and of the surgeon's own cleanliness. He stressed careful observation and diagnosis, warning against intervention unless absolutely necessary, and advocated for a compassionate, reassuring bedside manner with patients. This was not merely a collection of techniques, it was a holistic system of care. For centuries after its creation, the method served as the primary surgical textbook, first in the Arab world and later in medieval Europe after it was translated into Latin. Surgeons from Cordoba to Paris learned their craft from its pages. Its legacy is a powerful correction to a common historical oversight. It reminds us that the great river of medical knowledge flows from many tributaries. Al did not work in a vacuum. He consciously synthesized the anatomical theories of the ancient Greeks with relentless, hands-on empirical observation. He tested, he refined, he documented. In doing so, he created a bridge, carrying the wisdom of antiquity across the centuries and adding to it a layer of practical innovation that would eventually help ignite the European Renaissance. Rediscovering his work is not just about honoring a brilliant individual. It is about seeing the true, interconnected lineage of science. It shows us that progress is rarely a single flash of genius, but more often a slow, collaborative burn, fueled by curiosity and carefully recorded experience, passed like a torch from one culture and century to the next. These threads of knowledge, from medicine to textiles, all speak of societies already in motion, building on established traditions. But what if the very first chapter of this story has been written in the wrong order? In the dusty hills of southeastern Turkey, a discovery so profound was made that it did not just add a page to history, it demanded an entirely new book. To stand before it is to feel the ground shift beneath your feet, for here are immense, T-shaped pillars of limestone, some weighing over 10 tons, arranged in great stone circles. They are carved with an artistry that steals your breath, intricate processions of foxes, snakes, scorpions, cranes, and wild boars, all rendered with a fluid, confident grace. The scale is staggering, a monument that would be impressive in any era, but the date is what unravels everything. These circles were erected around 9,600 years before the Common Era. That is 7,000 years before the Great Pyramid of Giza. It is 6,000 years older than Stonehenge. This temple complex was built at a time when, according to every established model, humanity was supposed to be living in small, mobile bands of hunter-gatherers, focused solely on day-to-day survival. There was no pottery here, no metal tools, no evidence of domesticated plants or animals. The people who built did not have the wheel, they did not have settled farms, they did not have written language. And yet they had this. The implications are earth-shattering. For generations, archaeologists believed a simple, linear progression. First came the Neolithic Revolution, the discovery of agriculture. Farming produced surplus food, which allowed for specialization, which led to social hierarchy, complex religion, and finally, monumental architecture. Stands that entire sequence on its head. Here, the monumental architecture came first. The carving, the quarrying, the transporting, and the precise erection of these pillars required a massive, coordinated labor force, hundreds of people working together for a common, non-utilitarian purpose. This suggests a level of social organization, communication, and shared belief system that we never imagined for people of this epoch. They were not simple foragers, they were architects of the sacred. The knowledge encoded in these pillars is not of agriculture or engineering in a technical sense, but of something equally powerful, social engineering and symbolic thought. The animal carvings are likely not mere decorations. They are a complex symbolic language, a cosmology carved in stone, representing spiritual concepts, clan totems, or mythic narratives that bound these communities together. Building was an act that created community, forging a collective identity through shared ritual and immense collective effort. This forces a breathtaking reevaluation of human motivation. Perhaps it was not the search for food that first settled us down, but the search for meaning. The need to gather, to worship, to create something larger than any individual may have been the catalyst that brought people together in large, semi-permanent groups. This gathering place, this ritual focus, could have then created the necessity for more reliable food sources, indirectly spurring the experiments with plant cultivation that would later become agriculture. Is not a relic of early civilization, it may very well be its birthplace. It rewrites our origin story, teaching us that the human impulse to build temples, to seek the divine, and to work together for a grand vision might be the foundational spark from which all other aspects of civilization, from farming to cities, eventually grew. The profound antiquity of reminds us that the human drive to observe and record is ancient, but it finds one of its most mathematically precise expressions in a fragile book from a very different world. In the vaults of the Saxon State and University Library in Dresden, Germany, a single manuscript carries the weight of an entire civilization's celestial knowledge. Known as the Dresden Codex, it is one of only 4 Maya books known to have survived the ravages of time and the deliberate destruction of the Spanish conquest. Fashioned from bark paper coated with a fine layer of lime plaster and folded like a screen, its pages are a vibrant tapestry of red and black glyphs, intricate numerical tables, and depictions of gods presiding over cosmic events. For centuries after it arrived in Europe, it was an impenetrable artifact, its beautiful symbols a silent language that scholars could not hear. The modern decipherment of Maya script, one of the great intellectual detective stories of the 20th century, finally gave this book a voice, and what it says is nothing short of breathtaking. The Dresden Codex is not a history or a story, it is an advanced astronomical almanac. Its pages reveal a civilization that watched the sky not with passive wonder, but with the intense, mathematical focus of a master clockmaker. Consider the planet Venus, the brilliant morning and evening star. To the Maya, it was a deity of immense power, associated with war and rain. Tracking its complex cycle, which takes 584 days to return to the same position relative to the Sun and Earth, is a formidable task. Yet the Codex contains a Venus table that accurately predicts its appearances as both morning and evening star over a span of more than 300 years. They achieved this precision through generations of meticulous naked eye observation, recording the planet's movements until they could model its rhythm with mathematical elegance. But the Codex goes further. It contains tables for predicting solar and lunar eclipses, understanding the cycles of Mars, and tracking the synodic periods of the Moon. Perhaps most astonishing is its use of what scholars call the long count calendar and its accompanying super numbers. The Maya conceived of time in vast, cyclical expanses. Their calendar could pinpoint a day within a cycle spanning millions of years, a conceptual scale of time that rivals our own geological epochs. This was not just calendar keeping, it was a profound philosophical and scientific achievement, a demonstration of abstract thought that sought to bring the immense, chaotic cosmos under the domain of human calculation and ritual order. The tragedy, of course, is that this masterpiece represents only a tiny surviving fragment. Spanish clergy, viewing the Maya books as works of superstition, systematically burned them in auto ceremonies. The Dresden Codex, along with the other 3 survivors, likely survived only by chance, perhaps smuggled to Europe early as a curiosity. Its survival is a miracle, but its near destruction is a stark lesson in the fragility of knowledge. Today, scholars continue to pore over its tables, not only to understand Maya astronomy, but to appreciate the sheer intellectual ambition it represents. It stands as a testament to a different path of scientific development, one deeply with mythology and ritual, yet yielding results of stunning accuracy. It forces us to ask, how many other such codices, filled with observations of comets, star clusters, and planetary motions were lost to the flames. The Dresden Codex is a lonely beacon, a single surviving page from a vast library of celestial science that once flourished in the rainforest, reminding us that genius can wear many faces and speak in many glyphs, and that its whispers, however faint, can still reach us across the centuries. The Maya's mastery of time and space was carved into bark and plaster, but another ancient culture chose to express its deepest understanding through a different medium, the sphere. Hidden within the lush river deltas and dense jungles of southern Costa, a silent army of stone spheres waits. Numbering in the hundreds, these granite and gabbro orbs range from the size of a melon to colossal giants over 2 meters across, weighing more than 15 tons. They were crafted by the culture, a sophisticated society that flourished from around 300 years after the Common Era until the arrival of Spanish explorers. Unlike the inscribed pages of the Dresden Codex, these spheres carry no written message, no carved glyphs to decipher. Their meaning is locked in their form, a perfect geometry that has puzzled and inspired all who have encountered them since their modern rediscovery in the 1930s. The first and most persistent question is a simple one: why? Why would a people invest such immense, generational effort into creating objects with no apparent practical use? The theories are as varied as the spheres themselves. Some researchers see them as astronomical markers, aligned to point toward celestial events or the solstice sun, transforming the landscape into a sacred observatory. Others interpret them as symbols of power and status, placed near the homes of chiefs or along pathways to important ceremonial sites, their imposing presence a non-verbal declaration of authority. A more speculative idea suggests they represent the sun, the moon, or even celestial bodies in a model of the cosmos, a three-dimensional map of a spiritual universe. The truth is, we may never know their intended purpose with certainty, and that is part of their enduring power. They force us to confront the idea that some knowledge is not meant to be read, but to be felt and experienced. The true masterpiece, however, lies not in the mystery of their purpose, but in the undeniable genius of their creation. How did artisans, working only with stone tools, achieve such near-perfect sphericity and astonishingly smooth surfaces on such a massive scale? Studies of unfinished spheres and the surrounding quarries have revealed a likely process that speaks of profound patience and empirical skill. It began with selecting a large boulder of the right material. Workers likely used controlled fire to heat the stone's surface, then rapidly cooled it with water, causing layers to crack and flake away. Once a rough shape was achieved, the meticulous work began. Using hammerstones of a harder material, they would peck at the surface, slowly grinding it down through countless impacts, rotating the sphere constantly to maintain symmetry. The final stages involved polishing with sand or finer abrasives, perhaps over many years, to achieve that signature, almost unnatural smoothness. This was not a quick act of brute force. It was a slow, meditative dialogue between the craftsperson and the stone. It required an innate, tactile understanding of geometry, balance, and material properties. The maker had to hold the ideal form of the sphere in their mind's eye, and through relentless iteration, guide the raw rock toward that perfect abstraction. This represents a verbal knowledge, a wisdom of the hands and eyes that understood symmetry, center of mass, and curvature long before such concepts had formal mathematical names. The spheres are a physical manifesto of a cultural value system that prized harmony, balance, and perhaps a kind of earthly perfection as a reflection of a perfect cosmic order. They were not built for shelter, for defense, or for storing grain. They were built because the act of creating them, of imposing perfect form on chaotic nature, was itself a sacred and essential act. In a world filled with the jagged and the irregular, these people chose to make the smooth and the round, leaving behind a legacy not of words or wars, but of quiet, profound beauty. They teach us that technological advancement is not always about complexity or utility. Sometimes it is about the relentless, beautiful pursuit of an ideal, a silent knowledge carved not in code, but in stone. From the geared heavens of the mechanism to the silent giants of, these 15 masterpieces reveal a startling truth. Our ancestors were not primitive, but often possessed sophisticated, specialized knowledge that flickered out like a candle in the wind, waiting centuries for our curiosity to rekindle its flame. Each rediscovery is a humbling lesson in the fragility of human achievement. A library can burn, a language can fall silent, a craft can vanish with its last master, and an entire branch of understanding can retreat into the shadows. Yet these artifacts also testify to the boundless, resilient potential of the human mind to observe, to innovate, and to seek meaning. They teach us that history is not a simple, linear march of progress, but a rich and complex tapestry. Many of its most brilliant threads were temporarily lost, snipped by time, conflict, or simple forgetting, leaving gaps in the pattern we are only now beginning to weave back together. This changes how we see our own place in the story. We are not merely the inheritors of a straight line of discovery, we are also the detectives, sifting through the fragments of a much wider, more ingenious human experience than we ever supposed. And our tools for this detective work are growing more powerful every day. With invasive imaging that can read a scroll without unrolling it, with satellite surveys that reveal buried city plans, with genetic analysis that traces ancient migrations, we are developing a new kind of vision. Who knows what other secrets lie dormant in forgotten museum vaults, or wait patiently beneath the sand and soil for our technology to finally ask the right question. Let this exploration inspire you to look at the past with fresh eyes, to see not a simple before and after, but a conversation across. In understanding the ingenious paths we have walked before, and the quiet corners where knowledge went to rest, we gain a deeper, more humble wisdom for the journey ahead. If these mysteries of lost and found knowledge have captivated you, there are countless more forgotten corners of history waiting to be explored. Let us know in the comments which of these 15 masterpieces intrigued you the most, and subscribe to continue the journey of discovery together.